Welcome to the Head Shepherd podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ferguson, CEO here at NextGen Agri International, where we help livestock managers get the best out of their stock. Before we get started, thank you to our two fantastic sponsors for continuing to sponsor this podcast. MSD Animal Health is perhaps better known as Cooper's Animal Health in Australia and for their Allflex range across the world, with a comprehensive suite of animal health and management products. Honiger is a one-stop shop for wool harvesting and animal fibre removal. The Honiger team have a deep understanding of livestock agriculture, backed by Swiss engineering and a family business dedicated to manufacturing the best. We are grateful to our sponsors for their support, helping us bring Head Shepherd to you each week. And now it's time to get on with this week's episode. Welcome back to Head Shepherd. You're with Ferg. Great to have you listening along. This week on the show, we have Professor Ruth Nettle. Ruth is a social scientist and a professor there at the University of Melbourne and leads the Rural Innovation Research Group. She's been heavily involved in all things agricultural extension, change in rural settings, farming systems change, workplace strategies, workforce strategies within agriculture. A really interesting career. Started off in science and then merged into social science, as you will hear. But a really well-respected name in the extension space across Australian agriculture and internationally. So a really interesting chat with Ruth coming up. Before we get into that, I just want to quickly mention that the webinar we ran last week on shedding sheep, we had all those breeders from Australia and New Zealand and the odd scientist in there as well, talking about shedding sheep and what they've learnt and their experiences. That ended up being over 2 hours of chat. It's now loaded up on the hub, so you can jump on there and watch that webinar if you missed it. Yeah, warning, it is a long one, but some really interesting observations from those people who have been in the space for and been learning about how they bring the shedding gene into their sheep operations. So you'll find that recording on the hub and recommend you do so. Also, there's lots of great info on the hub, so don't be afraid to jump in there and have a look around. Their newsletter that we write every fortnight is on there, so if you're a member of the hub, you can get access to that, but you can also sign up to that newsletter to come straight to your inbox. All of the resources previous webinars, previous articles we've written, they're all on there, links to them. So, yeah, great opportunity to always be learning in ag, and we try to make sure that the NextGen Agri Hub is part of that, so the hub.nextgenagri.com. The latest article that's gone onto the hub is one written by Dr. Amy Lockwood. Amy works for us over in Western Australia, as you probably know. She's written an article on selection for udder conformation and its impact on lamb survival and lamb growth. So obviously all important attribute of a breeding ewe, and she's written an article about some analysis that's been done on that space. So I recommend jumping on there if that's of interest to you. Also, a really quick mention, the Xander Award is closing, Xander McDonald Award. We've got a few more days to get your entrance in. So if you're under 35 and you're interested in the award, we'd love to hear from you. It's a great honour every year to judge the New Zealand entrance, and so looking forward to that this year. You've got a few more days to get your entrance in there. Also, a bit of a random thought. I was out for a run this morning and thinking that it would be awesome if we could find someone out there that had a few hours a week to help us edit our videos that we put out sometimes. Trying to increase our presence on our amount of video we put out, and often Sophie has been left to do the hard yards on editing those videos, which we could use Sophie's skills in lots of places in the business. So it'd be good if we had someone else to support that part of our business. So if you are out there on a farm or you know stuff about farming and you have a few hours a week and you don't mind playing the videos, it would be worth just getting in touch with me. No promises, but interested in exploring what we could do in that space. Righto, we'll get underway with this week's show with Professor Ruth Nettle. Welcome, Ruth Nettle, to Head Shepherd.
Great to be here.
Excellent. Thanks, Ruth. I'll just start with a bit of your background for those that haven't come across you before. You're at University of Melbourne there. Maybe just how you ended up there and what the pathway has been to your current position and what that current position is or are.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually an agricultural scientist by background and worked in dairy extension for 10 years in Tasmania. So I had a bit of a background in ruminant nutrition. But as my current colleagues, because now I'm at the University of Melbourne and I'm a social scientist, they said I've gone to the dark side, away from ruminant nutrition to the people.
Soft science, as we like to call it.
The most important science.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I left Tasmania and did a PhD at the University of Melbourne around workforce and workforce change on farms. So I've really kept that focus on agriculture, farming, people, and we're coming up for 25 years this year of our research group, doing social research for agricultural industries and communities related to people, technology, and change.
Yeah, excellent. There's lots of things that we can talk about within that group of things that you've worked on. I guess one thing that I'm always interested in, we often think of farmers as being slow to adopt, slow to change, but I often sort of write about the fact that they're just humans, and humans don't like change generally. Like, it's not that farmers are better or worse. Is there evidence that ag is actually worse than any other aspect of industries?
No, absolutely. We know that farmers are entrepreneurs and are very much active learners and are focused a lot on meeting their goals and motivations in farming, and really highly networked. So looking outward, bringing knowledge into the business. And as a person I know very well in New Zealand always says, farmers are the smartest people they know. And so that's always been my orientation in the research I do and the work I used to do in extension, starting from not a deficit model, but from a full model that we're all about adaptation and change and how to best go about that. So it's always my starting position, and also in research as well.
Yeah, excellent. And as you've pointed out, it's such a complex thing that farmers, like, you're managing a very complex biological system, and with changing inputs all over the place and trying to, it's not an easy. And I guess each of us generally in the research fields or whatever, in the sort of sciences, obviously we have our little bent. I love my genetics, but there's a million other things people have to manage on a farm. So, and we get sometimes frustrated that people aren't thinking about our particular interest area as much as they should be, but obviously they've got lots of other things to worry about as well.
Yeah, people have different passions. We have the people that love the animals, we have people that love the machinery, we have people that love the genetics, and I think that's what some of our research has shown, that if you're someone working with farmers, don't go in with a lens of just one thing, that everyone's focused on profit or building net worth as the primary goal. We know that that's an important goal for everybody, but it might not be the most important. And so it's always having those conversations about the goals and values in farming and what's trying to be achieved. And then you can work your genetics into that conversation.
Yeah, and we do, don't worry about that. But it's 100%. And like, we've worked in lots of research and extension projects in my career, and it's 100% true that, everyone thinks we're all motivated by money, but at the end of the day, that's often, it's on the list, but it's not the top of the list in terms of what, like, our biggest pain point on the day was more likely to be time or some pride-related thing or some family-related thing or something completely sort of maybe not directly lined up with money anyway.
Yeah.
I'm interested in how 25 years of watching, I guess, agricultural extension change massively. Like, we actually had Cam Nicholson spoke at an hour at meeting I was at recently, and he did a sort of a bit of a history of ag extension in Victoria, which was pretty interesting. Like, I learnt new things about some train that ag department used to sort of send through the countryside with an information train essentially, and then now we've sort of moved right the way through where a lot of those extension businesses have disappeared completely or completely changed. Like, the government's having much less of a role, and it's now a lot more private consultants and people like me out and about talking about things. It's a massive shift over the last few decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I get to see the international systems as well.
Yeah. And
I suppose and farmers know this as well because they experience it. Often, government might have been involved. It might have been a key contact for them in the past. And then, there still might be some people there that they know, they still ring and call on them. But generally they know and have experienced the shift. And what we found in Australia when we've studied this is that it is having an effect on how people access information and advice and support, and losing that bit of confidence, I suppose, on where to go and who to ask. And everyone thinks, oh, you can just look it up now these days. You can just Google everything. But we know that that's not really the case. You want that person that has local knowledge. And so this is where we know that farmers always look to other farmers first.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed. That's the bit that hasn't changed. What has changed, and particularly for Australia, is just the number of organisations that are now involved in extension, even if they don't put that label on it. So we know, for instance, that 85% of Australian farmers do look to their input supplier, the people that provide the fertiliser and feed or other things, because information advice comes along with that, and often they're local people that do get around and know what's going on. And so, yeah, there's a lot of use of those people. And as you said, the private consultants like yourself are very important. So in our national survey of Australian farmers, it showed that 32% of farmers do use a private independent consultant as their main source of information and advice and support. And that is higher among broadacre cropping versus livestock farming. So, but what we know is there's a mix. People are using 4 to 5 different information advisory sources, and it can be their farming systems group or membership group. It could be their milk, their supply, the product supply chain people as well. So that has changed, that there is sort of this diversity of different organisations that are involved. And so sometimes that's where it does get a bit confusing, who do I go to for a particular topic or interest? And so that's why I think it's really important about it is a network of advice, and the importance to know what other advisors are doing, or the other people, who's who in the zoo, so to speak.
Yeah.
But the other big change in Australia is, or the big difference compared to other countries, is how much we've sort of divided up the advisory support into public and private goods. So government is still involved, often on the environment side, and then you have this attempt at demarking things that are productivity versus the environment. And I think that comes with, a lot of negative consequences when farmers see those sort of things often together, their farming and the environment. But things are divided on that line, and I don't think that's sort of great. The other thing in Australia is the rural research and development corporations are quite a unique feature, meaning that things are divided also up on industry lines.
Yeah.
And so that comes with strengths and weaknesses as well. So, yeah, they're the main sort of differences, trends over time around that commercialisation of advice. On top of that's the tech companies coming in and providing new sort of services and models that can be a bit overwhelming, I think, to farmers at times, because there's so much coming at them. So there's a fair bit going on in the extension system, I'd say, Mark.
Yeah, 100%. I guess, is that, I think you kind of covered it, but is that resulting in a bit of an erosion of trust? When people are confused about where to go, are they sort of also confused about who they can trust?
Yes, so we have done a little bit of recent work around trust in a particular context. In this case, it was emissions management and carbon farming. Basically what we found from that is everybody has their trusted, their go-to source of information, advice and support. But that's not going to be consistent across the population of farmers. And so some people are looking to the science and what government's saying, but also what their advisor is saying as well. So they're definitely using a whole range of people as a sounding board and considering sort of what's right for them. I think when there's a lot of complexity and uncertainty and risk and not a lot of good signals, so that can be the area around emissions management, like not a lot of clear signals, people sit back off that and just say, look, I'm not trusting, I'm not sure of where to go. And so until some things get a bit more certain for me, I will sit back from it. So the the trust piece, I think, is that everyone has their own circle of trust and their own network, and so it's not a clear picture of one main organisational source of advice. And that's the importance of having, some coordination in the system. That's our sort of view, which nobody really often takes that role, although I have noticed that some of the industry bodies are trying to sort of more, let's get everybody together and talk this out or think about what's the best way forward. And so that's that networked system that Australian farmers sort of need and are looking for.
Yeah, and you certainly see, I sort of work across lots of different states, and you see some states doing that a lot better than others in terms of making sure everyone's on the same page. I think South Australia, cool, shout out to those guys, but they seem to be well organised in terms of government and private consultants being together in a band and sort of networking a fair bit.
Yeah, very much so. And definitely a big shout out to South Australia for the way that they do try to coordinate in the system around livestock advice especially.
Yeah, and that probably brings us to the role of adversity and change, I guess, or we've just been through a pretty horrific drought, or hopefully through it. There's still parts of listenership that won't be through it yet. I guess I've been involved in extension campaigns that were lucky enough to kind of evolve when things were tough, and farmers seem to be more open to change some farmers are more open to change when they sort of backs against the wall. Is that proven by any science, or is that just my thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do. I did a stint as a rural financial counsellor after moving to Victoria from Tassie, and I really am thinking very much of the people that are still strongly affected by drought in southwest Victoria and other parts of Australia. And definitely our research, there's a couple of things I think, and I know that the word resilience is bandied around so much now, it just has no meaning. But I suppose the way that but the way we think about it is what we see is that in crisis, and there can be all different sorts of crisis. We've been working with farmers in northern New South Wales around floods. So whatever the crisis, it is and can be a stimulus for change. And so I do agree with what you said there, that it can, backs against the wall, there's a crisis, what can we do? And all I say is that resilience is not bouncing back. It is actually bouncing forward or changing. So, how can we be more robust in the future? And it's really hard to think about that when you're in it. And what we have found is that following a crisis, if you have space, that's when it can be possible to reflect and learn best together in a group in Southwest Victoria or amongst your peer farmers to think about what could we do differently. It's not just about going back to how we were, and that's that opportunity that crisis can bring. The other thing I would just say, and this is sharing from an experience with working with dairy farmers through the millennial drought, is we identified that, because thinking that was like a 10-year period of ups and downs through that time, that we definitely identified different phases of drought. So if it continues on, there's different decisions and different things. So it's not about bouncing forward or changing. It's sort of having to go into a new way of thinking about farming and the enterprise. And so there's different phases. It's not just in and then coming out. It's different phases with different decisions, different people you need around you. And so there's some of the things that I think are important at this time around resilience.
Yeah, excellent. We might come back to that. I just wanted to drill into you've recently, or relatively recently, interviewed 180 farmers on their sort of challenges around workforce. It'd be great to understand what you've learnt there, what it means to be an employer of choice. And I think that's something everyone listening would be really interested to hear about. What everyone sort of, labour is always top of mind for most small businesses, including mine. So it'd be good to hear what you've learnt.
Yeah, and The topic of farm workforce is really important to me because it was actually the reason why I changed from being a ruminant nutritionist to being a social scientist. It was actually the topic of workforce and the change in workforce I could see with working with farmers in Tasmania that made me want to look into that topic. And so I looked at farm employment relationships in the dairy sector for my PhD. And so I have been doing workforce research sort of since then over the last 20 odd years. But most recently I had the able to talk through surveys and interviews, I suppose, with 180 farmers in Australia. And that's across all sectors, livestock, but as well as horticulture and intensive in farming. And we asked about, their human resource management or people management practices and what their challenges and issues were, and also what was working in their business. And out of that work, there has been a health check for people management developed, so I can always provide the information by way of follow-up for that. But what we found was that there was an increasing interest in being recognised and respected as better employers, and people seeing that as a way to help attraction and retention, so that identification that we need to do better and be better on the farm around our people, and that can be a way that we attract more people, or perhaps don't need to keep recruiting people because we're retaining people better. And we definitely found that the larger farms had a lot more people management practices, but you could sort of say, well, they've got a back office, they've got an HR department perhaps, and they can do that. And that's really what we found. It was more a resource issue between the smaller versus the larger farms around people management. It wasn't. We also did some attitudinal questions. It wasn't because smaller farms were less passionate about the people and wanting to look after people at all. So it was purely about that resourcing, that help. So what we suggest is, more peer support, more farmer learning groups, more things that help people do better in the people space. And small businesses, that including your own, can benefit from sort of that peer learning. How can we be better? We found that farm employers that valued training for themselves were more likely to support their employees to do training and development. Now, that sort of says, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But I suppose what that means is if there's people listening to your podcast that do value training for themselves, then we can see that will flow on potentially to their employees. But if not, then it might be a bit of a struggle, or might think, oh, what's the value or benefit for having more development among employees? So it's just that, that importance of development for everybody on the farm. And I suppose the other key finding was where there was quite a gap between the small and large farms was around the recruitment and the effort put into recruitment. So, for instance, some of the larger farms, it wasn't just sort of job ads. There was sort of really marketing their brand as an employer. And so that is something that we would recommend to small to medium-sized enterprises, if they can, to sort of put more effort into different recruitment strategies, knowing that workforce can be a real issue depending on the remoteness and where people are. On the flip side, we've also looked at what a lot of young people are looking for from work in another project. And what's coming through clearly is that positive workplace culture. And so, yes, people always say, oh, we just can't pay people more, or we can't do this or we can't do that. But everybody can work on what the team environment is like. And I think employees clearly show they really value that collaborative team environment, a good, safe team environment where people feel valued, can share their opinions and ideas and work well together, seems to be something that's commonly looked for, or a reason for turnover if it's not there. So there's a couple of insights, but I'm happy to provide the the full report in detail to your listeners.
Yeah, cool. We'll definitely get that in the show notes so that people can get hold of that. In practice, what does a good sharing culture look like, I guess? Is there, I'm assuming that's not once a month that's share, it's sort of how you interact on a daily basis and just that how much respect there is across the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we had a lot of examples from livestock farms in this work about what they do on a day-to-day basis. Now, of course, this is going to change based on the nature of your enterprise and what you can do. But people often did talk about having what they called the toolbox meetings. Yeah. First thing in the morning, everyone arriving, they'd be sharing what was good from the day before, what's coming up today. They might be celebrating if it's somebody's birthday that day, or really how can help each other on the tasks for that day. So that from a basic level, creating that environment that people feel they're part of, and it's really a great place to come to and turn up to each day.
Yeah. And where did autonomy and sort of ownership come? Does it rank in employees?
Yes, it does depend. This is what I think that's what's hard in the people management space, that there is definitely a lot of signals from research about what's really important, but it really is about how you, in your individual business, make it work for yourself. So we can have some general things. The one would be that, all workplaces, in terms of a positive psychology approach, say there's three things. Purpose, so why people are doing the jobs you need them to do. Yeah. So part of that great quality produce or getting to an export market or, that purpose in what people are doing. The second is mastery, and this is where the autonomy piece or some control over what people are doing, that they feel this, no matter what it is, if it's moving a fence or if it's making sure the water troughs are full, that there is some mastery or autonomy over that. They feel, yes, I've done a great job. Yeah. And this is in every aspect of life and work. Yeah. And so they're like the two, or autonomy then can be some control over some aspect of my job and my work. So autonomy, mastery and purpose. Yeah. And that's from Dan Pink, who consults to lots of different workplaces, not agriculture. Yeah. But
I think it's, we know within our own lives, that's those sort of things when you haven't got all those three things running together, that you're not as motivated or not as good as what you could be. So that's all. Yeah. That all makes sense. When you mentioned marketing businesses and so that people know you exist and people know that you're a place that they would like to work, is that sort of a good social media storytelling strategy, or what does that look like for a small business?
So was quite a few examples in the research where people said, yes, they have a social media presence, particularly around, say, if they've got a manager role, they're seeking to advertise. So that's short videos, information about the property, the location, the things, the benefits around the job. So yes, for some it's sort of a social media approach, but for others it can just be not just describing the job, but the environment and the things that you might get from doing that job and having that communicated in some way. And that can be through a great job ad or by word of mouth as well, which we know is still very common in many businesses in local areas. So it's not just talking about, I need, a farm hand to do X and Y on the farm, but it's also, and there'll be flexibility in hours, or there'll be opportunity to have training and development, or these other things that make up the whole package around working life. So that's, you can go professional, or you can go just talk about these other things. I think the challenge for agriculture, is that there's global skill shortages, that this issue of workforce is not going to go away. It's potentially going to get harder because agriculture is starting to compete with other sectors for the types of skills you need. So with bigger farms, you have teams. So everybody wants a good team worker, a good collaborator. Well, so does every other business in the economy. IT and data skills, farms are becoming much more data oriented. Everybody wants those skills as agriculture does. So I think, therefore, the whole sector has to be better at promoting the good workplaces, the excellent career opportunities, to prospective people, not just say there's farm jobs here, because people have a negative perception potentially of farm jobs. So I think there's a big piece of work, but that's not an individual farm that can do that. But at an individual farm level, it's these things that you can do on your farm to better attract and retain a workforce that can make a big difference to your business.
Yeah, I guess what I saw, we work around, I don't know, somewhere near 200 farms, and I guess the ones that I see staff flocking to are the ones that are generally innovating themselves, which, like, if they're doing something interesting, which means they're trying, like, there's new processes being implemented or whatever like that. Those tend to be farms that people want to go to because they know that they're going to be stimulated, they're going to be challenged to learn new things, and often they can have a bit of autonomy around that because, often that opportunity might be handed to them because it's something that the farm owner knows they need but doesn't want to be the leader in that game.
Yeah, definitely. And with some other work that we've done around technology and workforce, there's a lot of changes going on there. So people that perhaps don't have the knowledge and skills people require, if people are using technology in a particular way, it can really augment those people and they love it and learn it as well. So I think there's a lot of changes going on through technology around the workforce skills that are needed, and the type of people that might be interested. So that's sort of there's exciting changes there that farmers are working directly on now, and I think it's a really good point to make. The other thing I was just going to say around retention, because there's a lot of farms now that have really great retention because they've put the effort into these people management practices. But what I see out the other side is then when they do have someone leave the business for any reason, it can be quite a shock to then be entering back into the recruitment because you've been out of the recruitment for so long, and then the labour markets have changed and, the people are different. So, it's not all just about the high turnover farms. It's just I've noticed that with that you still need a workforce planning strategy, I suppose, and a workforce development strategy, even if you've got great retention.
Yeah, I guess you haven't flexed those muscles for a while. It gets you forget all those skills, which is lots of synergies there. But that's a really good point. I've got this theory which has got no basis whatsoever other than a theory, but that we will get more people on farms because AI is going to take away a lot of the, I guess, white collar jobs are being maybe removed and replaced by AI. And so I've got this half theory that we might see people coming back into ag because it'll be the last job where we need humans on the ground doing stuff. It's a bit of a doomsday thought process, but I don't know. I think ag is getting more interesting by the minute, and there is some massive opportunities there, and it's obviously coming from my confirmation bias. But I don't know if there's any potential truth to my theory.
Yes, there's a lot of conversation. Is AI going to make us smarter or dumber? Is AI going to, replace jobs and things? And, I'm trying to look at it myself as well. People say, you should keep experimenting and trialling with different AI, and so I am doing that myself. I think those sorts of things are possible. Definitely, I think people are having a second look now at AI with the, things aren't coming back to us, I think, particularly in agriculture, how we would like. So I think that there has to be more bespoke development, tailored development to ag, because some of what we're seeing is just very generic, because all AI is doing is pattern matching, and perhaps there's not a lot of agriculture-related things on digitalised, I suppose, that large language models can go and access and produce for us. So I think broadly there's more to be done within an ag itself, and then to really think about it, work on it, discuss it around those future thoughts that you're thinking and looking for those opportunities. Don't just let it happen, because it'll probably end up in what we don't want it to do. So try and think of the unintended consequences. How do we shape it? I think that's it to me. But yes, we might get some people back.
Yeah. Well, I'm good. You didn't blow my theory out of the water anyway, so that's good. I'm interested in we've already got a slight erosion in trust, as we've talked about. That I think is getting accelerated on, probably not in ag yet. We don't have too many deep fakes that I know of sort of, but we do see a lot of newsletters and stuff coming out which are almost in the just clearly GPT, like it's clearly some sort of large language model has written it. Even no one's even bothered to change the American spelling often. I guess, there's a couple of things. One, for those people out there, if you are going to use AI, you make sure you've got humans using it to augment humans, not just get some tripe out of AI and stick it in your newsletter, because it's fairly obvious and everyone's getting sick of it. But I guess, are people going to get more and more sceptical of what they read and see, which, I think we are, but what does that mean for extension, I suppose, going forward? Are we going to have to go back to human-to-human contact?
Yeah. And I'm actually going to the Australasia Pacific Extension Network Conference in Brisbane next week. Oh. And this is their question. The whole conference is talking a lot about this. I think this shows how important the extension role is now going to be going forward, because you do need someone checking and networking appropriately, I suppose, and that needs a thoughtful presence.
Yeah.
I suppose. So, yes, people are trying to save time, but you have to have the quality. And so I think for extension, this era of AI is going to make it even more important, whether you call it fact-checking or whether you call it localising material. Yes, it can make you more efficient and effective, but you need people with your sort of knowledge, Mark, to be checking and ensuring that it's fit for purpose for our clients, customers and farmers in Australia overall. So I think it makes that extension function more important. Extension's always been about that intermediary that helps translate, support, network and broker. And I think now that information and knowledge role is going to be more important in the era of AI.
Yeah, for sure.
And the other thing is we get our students to, because remember I'm in the university system, they have to declare the use of AI. They have to say what platform they used. They have to say what command they provided and how they then can show it's also their own work, what they've done with those outputs. Yeah, so maybe newsletters need to have declarations.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, we use them to quickly check grammar or something, but I think you see stuff that's not original, clearly not original content, and it clearly is just half of it's garbage. And we were talking off camera before we started how at least one big company being caught out by using AI poorly, and it does hallucinate. It does make up references and stuff. If you do give it a fairly vague prompt, it'll give you a fairly vague response. So, just be careful out there.
I use it often. We have to present abstracts or something like that in like 500 characters, and I'm never very good at writing things very briefly. Yeah. So I write it all in my own words and then say, could you can you bring it back to 500 characters?
Yeah, it's beautiful, that sort of stuff. Exactly. I guess just finally, before we get to the last couple of questions, but you do a bit of international work, or maybe quite a bit of international work. Is there anything that somewhere else in the world is doing that we could learn in Australia and New Zealand?
Yeah, I think, look, we're all in the same boat. There's a lot of uncertainty for agriculture globally. We have climate challenges. We have environmental challenges. So I think there's a lot in common. What I see, I suppose, out of the European Union is there's a lot of effort into collaborative work, bringing consumers in closer to what's happening sort of at the farm level. And so, they call them living laboratories, which of course agriculture is all a living laboratory. But they're purposefully bringing farmers, tech companies, advisors, consumers potentially together to jointly problem solve. And so we do a little bit of that here, but I think it's just much more institutionalised, for want of a better word. And then also places like Denmark, still have really great advisory systems around farmers, sort of part public-private, but very much geared to farmer needs through these issues and problems. I think the technology issues are all shared. The other thing, I suppose, because I did spend time in the UK looking at technology, I did Australian UK comparison. In Australia, with the sort of the ag tech space, there's a little bit of investment around here with government and supporting startups and connecting them to farm. In the UK, I saw that as much more organised and coordinated, where extension people were actually the key coordinators between the ag tech startup companies and the farm trials, or the farmers that were trialling, whether it was collars on livestock or other things. And that extension person and they were often private consultants like yourself, Mark, they were really instrumental in helping the tech companies understand what they were trying to do, and also working to ensure the farmers they weren't wasting, I suppose, or spending a lot of time trying to get things to work. So, and that was really well supported by UK government programs, and it was comprehensive in Wales and in parts of England. So I see that Australia's just a bit behind on that. We're leaving it to the ag tech startups to be doing all that work, and then the farmers have got to spend a lot of time to make it work for themselves. I just wish in Australia we had a bit more sort of effort around that. I think it would save a lot of angst and land things on farms quicker and better.
Yeah, no, interesting. You mentioned you're off to the conference next week. I'd be interested in your take on whether that room's getting older or younger. I guess when we had state government departments in every state, there were great training grounds. That's where I got my start, and there's lots of my equivalents for decades before and after. That I feel like now, with a lot of these places sort of being privatised, there isn't those early to mid-career people out there that have gone through some sort of base training for 5 years out of uni. Like, they're pretty hard to find these days.
Yeah, so it is really interesting that there are a lot more young people coming in. I think in Queensland they've put a lot of effort into graduate programs. So they've taken like young people that did environmental science degrees, because all the ag people have sort of been taken up.
Yeah.
And giving them 12 months working in private businesses as well as public, and 12 months of training and support to the business as well. So I think there's some models there which is really bringing young people in strongly. So at the conference there's a big range, a lot of new people. Cool. There's definitely a hollowed out mid-career. So there's a lot of older people, a lot of younger people, but that middle, that exciting middle, still needs a bit more work. But what's been really great about that network now is that, yes, there's public, private providers, not-for-profits, community organisations, farming systems groups. So it really is mirroring what is the extension practitioner now. It's in all these different businesses. And I think that's really important because there's no other venue. And the New Zealanders are involved as well. Like and we have it in New Zealand every couple of years. So I think that's also important, the international perspective.
Yeah, I'll have to get there one day. Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Ruth. It's been great to have a chat. The last couple of questions we ask everybody, we'll throw at you now. I didn't give you a lot of notice on these, unfortunately, but we'll see what you say anyway. What's the last thing you changed your mind about?
Oh, that's a real hard one. Sometimes I think I change my mind about a lot of things as I get older. Isn't that weird? You're supposed to be more set in your ways, but I change my mind. But I suppose around this topic, I always used to think, everyone's got to be more targeted towards particular farmers and, put more effort into that sort of targeting of people. And I sort of still think it in some ways, but what I think now is most important is to try and get more participation of people. We know that if people do show up or attend things or whatever, they really do get a benefit from it and they change. So so I've just changed my mind about just try to get people there in whatever way you can or get them involved in any way you can, because participation actually matters sometimes more than what I used to think.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've been blown away a few times recently where a really unintended consequence of a discussion we're having, that someone going, I should do this now. And it's like you could have presented 5 logical arguments why they should do that, change that practice. But some completely other thing is the reason that they decided to change. So it's really, really important to get to somewhere, getting those people involved in some sort of group, even if it's it's about controlling wild dogs or whatever, but you learn about sheep reproduction or whatever it is. There's always something that you learn something just because you're dealing with other farmers often, as you've already covered.
Yeah.
And the final question is, who's the best human you've had the opportunity to learn from or pleasure to learn from?
Also very hard question.
Yeah, I got down to 6, I think. But, yeah.
Well, I'm actually going to say my students, because young people, they do have a different view of the world and a different way of thinking. But I have a few new PhD students from that are Chinese nationals, and I learn things from them every day about their background and the sacrifices that their parents have had to make for them to come to Australia and to study. I also learn just about how committed and passionate they are, and that counts for a lot in terms of, it's not just language or misunderstandings. Communication-wise, it's just that commitment and passion and how committed they are to study and to working and to getting to know farm. They're working in the agriculture sector. And so I've learned, I suppose, a lot about really learning from anybody at any age and background, and how that can also change your mind. So there's a relationship between who I'm learning from and who I change my mind, what I change my mind about. And so it's always sobering to have that next generation coming in, and also how much they fit into their lives. That's what I learn. People have this sometimes negative view of young people, but all the students I interact with, they've got 2 or 3 side hustles. They're setting up a business they're studying and they're doing things. So it gives me sort of more motivation as well in what I do. So I learn most from my students at the moment.
Fantastic. Great answer, Ruth. That's really great to hear. Thanks very much for your time, Ruth. Really appreciate it. Enjoy Brizzy, catching up with a heap of colleagues, I'm sure. It'll be a great conference.
Yes, I'm catching up with some South Australian livestock advisors actually, so it should be good.
Excellent.
Yeah, and very happy. Thanks. I think it's great what you're doing, and I'll listen in.
Excellent. Thanks, Ruth.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks again to Heinegger, who are proud world leaders in the manufacturing and supply of professional sheep shearing and clipping equipment. Thank you to MNSD Animal Health and Norflex Livestock Intelligence. They offer an extensive livestock product portfolio focused on animal health management, all backed up by exceptional service. We thank both of these companies for their ongoing support of the Head Shepherd podcast.